situation where you find that they look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
All right, welcome back and thank you for staying with us on Daybreak this morning. It's time for the newspaper review, and we will take a look at what the dailies are actually saying at the moment. We'll begin with Daily Trust newspaper, and we have the lead story on the front page that says CBN devalues Naira to 630 per $1, and we have writers that says decision follows Tinubu Emefiele's meeting, realistic exchange rates to save 4 trillion naira. LCCI XDG says 2023 budget first casualty, and you can find details of that on page 4. We also have, if you take a look at page 3, Zamfara governor accuses Matawale of looting 17 vehicles, TVs from government house. We also have a soldier open fire on protesting youths in Bayelsa, kill 1, injures others. And on page 5, we have Jigawa Hajj pilgrims survive emergency landing in Kano. And these are some of the stories that you can actually find in Daily Trust newspaper. So feel free to grab a copy.
All right, let's move to this day newspaper, and the list story is on Tinubu. It says we're ready for business partnership with willing nations. Says Nigeria will remain non-aligned, and China pledges increased economic cooperation with Nigeria. And lastly, EFCC chair meets president, briefs him on the state of anti-graft war. Okay, you can read that. You can start reading that in the front page and continue reading on page 48. And let's above the lead story, it's on PDP. It says PDP has right to suspend, expel you, court tells Wiki. That is on page 49. And below that, we have adhere to our party's manifesto. Adamu urges APC governors. The writers attached to this one. It says explain time of subsidy removal will be challenging to them. And then Uzodimma emerges PGF chair, says all presidential candidates promise to remove subsidy. All right, you continue reading that on page 48 in the These Day newspaper. And let's take a look at the top. We have end of subsidy, NNPC raises petrol price to between 488 naira and 557 naira per litre. The writers attached to this one. It says workers insist on status quo as federal government NLC meeting is deadlocked. And then it says you can't ask a partner to negotiate at gunpoint, says Ajero, as the NLC president. That is, and Huriwa condemns upward review of pump price. And lastly, we have NECA cautions against escalation of inflation. And then that's pretty much what you can see in the front page of the These Day newspaper for today, the 1st of June, 2023.
All right, let's take a look at Daily Sun newspaper. We have NNPCL unveils new fuel price regime, and writers here says petrol now 537 naira per litre in Abuja, 557 naira in Borno, 488 naira in Lagos. Commuters groan as transport fares spike. Federal government, Labour spoil for showdown. Nigerians in challenging moment over subsidy removal, says Adamu APC chairman. And you can actually find a pictorial of the new pump price across all states, and the petrol station workers adjusting pumps to reflect the new fuel price at NNPC filling station in Abuja yesterday. More stories coming in. ASU fights back. Drags government to court over discriminatory payment of salaries. You can also see a story here that says subsidy, federal government organized labor meeting deadlock, workers insist on return to status quo, says no consensus reached. League of African Ambassadors debuts, and Senate leadership, Igbo youth plan 2 million man match for Kalu, urge Tinubu to release Kanu. We also have more stories. APC elects Uzodinma chair Progressives Governors Forum. Presidential poll. INEC rejects own documents in Atiku. PDP petition against Tinubu. And we have a writer that says Obi LP postponed to continue presentation today over ill health of 2 key staff. And on the footnotes there, that's NPO. Others mourn Ray Power, AIT founder Dr. C.
All right, taking a look at the leadership, we have some interesting but yet disturbing pictorials there. And let's take this one, boldly written. That's the lead story about subsidy removal. And it says federal government labor talks deadlocked as marketers raise fuel pump price. The writers attached to this one, it says NNPCL confirms 557 naira per litre price, cities current realities, and LLC rejects a new pricing template. It also says we are in dire moment, APC chairman Adamu laments, and then stakeholders call for palliative to cushion the effect. That's the lead story in the leadership this morning. You read that on page 4. And let's take a look at the top where we have APC governors pick Uzodinma as PGF chairman. That story is on page 6 in the leadership newspaper. And then we also have Tinubu, INEC, APC ask tribunal to dismiss Atiku's document, and page 7 has more of that story. And then let's take a look at this one that talks about the 10th National Assembly. It says intrigues in Senate threatens Akpabio's endorsement. That story is on page 7. And then there's another one that says tackle insecurity, poverty, northern elders tell president. Page 7 has more details. And troops kill 55 ISWAP top commanders, terrorists in Borno. Page 24 has that. And lastly, we have Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio rises to 10.86%. That is on page 27. And that's all for leadership newspaper this morning.
All right, next is the Guardian newspaper. We have the big story here with a pictorial that's on fuel subsidy removal. It talks about poses about $800 million palliative. Labour's next move as Nigerians brace for higher inflation. And moving away from that story on page 6, you'd actually find more stories at the top of the infograph there. 26% of Nigerians financially literate as Botswana leads Africa. OT suspends levies on transport operators in Abia. Resetting Nigeria's foreign policy to be a giant of Africa again. You can find the news analysis on page 4. And on the footnotes there, you have no work, no pay. Falana sues federal government over alleged unfair treatment of ASU members. Panic in Lagos community over fuel leakage, broken pipeline. And these are some of the stories on the Guardian newspaper.
And on the Punch this morning, which is looking a bit scanty, but there are stories we can actually update you with. And the story at the top says CBN multiple exchange rates may increase debt burden. That's coming from World Bank. To get more details of how the CBN multiple exchange rates may increase debt burden from the World Bank, there you can read on page 30 in the Punch newspaper. Then federal government and Labour meeting deadlocked as fuel price hits over 700 naira per litre. Their writers attached to this one. It said the NLC kicks rejects petrol price hike. Economic hardship will worsen, says marketers. And the last writer says PDP and Labour Party orders slam federal government. And just below that, we have a pictorial of the president, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, a congratulatory message there from one of his well-wishers. And that's pretty much what's in the front of the Punch newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at Nigerian Tribune next. From the top of the page there, Naira exchanges for 746 Naira, 67 kobo to a dollar in black market. We also have Tinubu meets EFCC boss, NNPC GMD. Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio stands at 10.86%, says FIRS. And below the name mast there, we have the big story. as NNPC adjusts pump price to 537 naira per or 500 naira per litre. NLC rejects petrol subsidy removal. Meeting with federal government ends in deadlock. Writers here says government cannot do it unilaterally. You don't ask partners to negotiate at gunpoint, says Ajero. Fuel subsidy removal is in order, says APC governors. Nigerians groan over transport fare hike. 2 PDP senators resigned from party. Details on page 8. PDP has right to suspend, expel erring members lawfully. Court tells Wike. And we also have Timothy Adegoke's murder. Court jails receptionist 2 years. ASU sues federal government over discriminatory treatment and presidential election court admits Atiku PDP's documents against Tinubu's victory as witnesses ill health stalls the proceedings. These are some of the stories of on a Nigerian Tribune.
All right, let's move on to the Nation newspaper. At the top, we have national honors awardees to wait. All right, so the reason for that, you can get the reason on page 5. And then hearing in LP, OB petitions stalled. PDP forges ahead. Page 6, accommodator story. And then Senate and PAN pays tribute to media magnate Dr. C. And the PDP Senators Rogide Akinyelure dump party. You can read both stories on page 5 in the Nation's newspaper. And then 200 reps are backing me, says Abbas. Says Lukman slams a party chair Adamu. All right, that story started from the front page, but you continue reading on page 36 this morning. And then the lead story says NNPCL fixes 488 naira to 557 naira per litre petrol price template. And then we have riders attached to it. It says price to fluctuate in accordance with market forces. And then NLC, TUC demand return to old price. And then the government negotiations continues on their part. That story started on the front page and then continue reading on page 8. And then we have a pictorial of the French ambassador to Nigeria, and also we have a picture of the Kwara State governor here. So you can get more details of how the meeting ended with the French ambassador to Nigeria on improved agriculture and education. And lastly, we have PGF Chair Uzodinma APC governors back subsidy removal. All right, and then the 10 Senate support the progressives. That's pretty much what you can see in the front page of the Nation newspaper this morning.
And finally, on Business Day newspaper, inflation, manufacturers' unsold goods jump 22% in 1 year. We also have the big story here that says, as subsidy goes, Nigerians demand cuts in governance costs. Nigeria Air gulps 85 billion naira in 8 years, yet airport infrastructure suffers. Banking agents rise 41% on new mobile money licenses, and Eco Bridge 1 more month of suffering as federal government dithers. And these are some of the stories on Business Day newspaper. And with that, we have to actually come to an end. We're done with reeling out some of these stories on the front pages of the dailies, and we actually have our guest in the studio, and he's Nasser Lowell. He's the chief editor-in-chief of Dateline. Yes. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
All right, so let's begin with we all know what's actually happening in Nigeria, right? But let's begin with the lead story on the Daily Trust newspaper. In spite of everything happening, talking about the fuel subsidy removal, and now we're seeing that the CBN had actually devalued the naira to 630 per dollar. That's after a meeting with the CBN governor and the president yesterday. Now, Nigerians actually want to know, is this a good or a bad thing?
Well, maybe we'll leave that to the economists to say whether it's good or bad. But this is something that we have been expecting all along, right through the campaigns, and even during his inauguration speech, the president actually said that he will work towards unifying all the divergent rates that we have at the moment, because you have the investors window, you have the parallel market, you have all sorts of rates being bandied about. So now that they are coming up with 630 to $1, I foresee some level of adjustment, in the market, because most of the people that used to take from their domiciliary account, which they receive from their commercial banks at the rate of 400 plus, and take it straight to the black market to sell it at 700 and over. I now foresee that, stopping, and then all those who have stashed, all the foreign currencies, I also expect them to start bringing them out, because they don't know at what rate, the dollar will now be selling, because even as at yesterday, so many people were actually selling at 714 naira from the rate of 761 also when the president took over. So I hope this will lead to the unification of all the rates like the president wants to achieve, because it doesn't make sense actually.
But is something like this achievable in Nigeria, judging from the fact that we wanted to do Naira redesign policy to actually curb some ills in the society, and at the end of the day, so many quarters believe that we haven't really achieved that. Do you think that we will succeed in this one, and why?
Well, it depends on actually the political will, and the resolution of the resolve of the president. If it is something that they truly want to implement, believe me, it's something that they can succeed. Because, like I said, if you are selling the dollar, at 630 naira, even from the official rate, then certainly so many people will not have it. Will not have the luxury of taking, their money to the black market, because the difference is not much. But when it used to be about 70 or so %, you buy at 400 plus, like I said earlier, and then you sell at over 700 naira. Certainly nobody will want to do any other thing. You just collect from the official rate and find a way of disposing it at the parallel market, which will earn you cool money without even raising a finger. So that's basically the thing. I think it's something that they can succeed if they truly want to make it work.
Okay, so now let's go back to the issue on the front burner, talking about the fuel subsidy removal. Now, we've actually seen, or we are seeing its effects, even in Abuja as it is. And the fact that the subsidy fuel price, the pump price, has not even doubled but tripled at the moment. So, transportation will definitely, or has even increased, food, salaries remain the same, minimum wage remains the same, people are complaining. What is your take on this? Do you think, the fuel subsidy removal could have been delayed, further just to ease the burden on Nigerians? Or do you think that rather than, just taking it all off, it should have partially been phased out?
Well, we've tried the partial removal of subsidy in the past, and they didn't work. What I expected actually in this this time around, is the fact that even the former president, they have made it clear to Nigerians that they did not budget for subsidy beyond June. So my surprise is when institutions like the NNPC, now coming up to say that they will be selling petrol at so rate, when we have not even, reached the end of June. I want to believe that the stock that they have, is the one that they've had over time. It's not a new stock, but suddenly they have changed the price, and you can see even the other marketers, it is the old stock that they have, but because they want to make a killing out of it, they have all adjusted. And if you had seen what had happened in the beginning, they stopped selling at all because they didn't know what will happen. But once the NNPC issued that statement to confirm that yes, they have done an upward review, and this is the rate that fuel will be selling at. All the marketers now opened their filling stations and started selling at exorbitant rate, because why should it be like 3 times the amount that we used to sell? Because like I said, it's not as if you have collected a new stock. Like, you can make the argument that, okay, the stock that I have purchased now is based on the new reality, the new market reality. But no, we are talking about the old stock that you used to have. And then all of a sudden, you are now selling it at a new rate, without thinking of
So, but isn't that
the
taking
repercussions.
advantage of Nigerians?
Of course, it is taking advantage. And Nigerians, now those that are in charge of all the selling of petroleum products and what have you, they think they have done their own part. Before you know it now, the market women, the drivers and other segments of the society will now key in. So before you know it, the implication of all this subsidy removal, the multiplier effect actually will be all over. The price of food, the price of goods and services. And sadly, the salary, like you said earlier, has not changed. And even you can see so many states have not been able to start implementing the current minimum wage, which is a law. At the state level, most of the local governments are not even paying up to 15,000. And then you are now coming with changes like this without putting any palliative in place, which will reduce the hardship that the people will certainly face as a result of this.
We understand that the meeting with the president yesterday came to a stop. It was stalemate. It was deadlocked, and of course that seems to be flooding the front pages of the papers this morning. We also heard from the APC chairman talking to his party members that this is going to be a hard time. Now, when you want to explain this to a layman in the society, so to speak, what is the implication of this? What does this mean for the ordinary Nigerians? Like, spelling it the way that it is, because I heard some people already putting out statistics, prices of food, transport fare and all of that, and of course we're feeling it already.
Yeah, well, sadly the people will be at the receiving end. That's something that we can't even start debating about. But I expected the government, like I said, to have put in place some palliatives. Right now, so many people will not be able to even go to work. Yes, I know so many people that used to spend between 200 and 300, from their place of residence to where they are working. But right now, the price has tripled. And so many of them have completely finished their salaries. So what do you expect them to do? Is to remain at home. I also expect organizations, employees, and what have you, to be able to make some adjustments. But like you said, for the common man, this is going to be a very hard time. And I hope the government will not just allow just the common man to be the one to be asked to sacrifice. I also expect our political office holders and what have you to be able to also reduce the cost of governance, so that if you used to move about with a number of vehicles, in your convoy, why don't you reduce it to maybe 2 or 3, so that once you have the spare vehicle, you can move about, like the former FCT, the immediate past FCT minister, he had been doing that, moving about with only 2 or 3 vehicles, unlike other ministers. You see a minister moving with 7, 8 vehicles, within the FCT, not even, outside the seat of power. So with all that, it means government will be spending lots of money, to be able to run the machinery of governance. So if we are talking about the need to make sacrifice, honestly, it shouldn't be for the common man alone. Even those in government should also be able to show Nigerians, okay, this is what we are also doing on our own part, so that the cost of governance will keep going down, and then the money that we are likely to be generating from the reduction in the cost of governance, we can now channel it to things that can lessen the impact of all these changes.
What's the possibility of this administration cutting government costs? governance costs?
Well, it's left to be seen.
Because we've heard
the
past
president,
administrations actually say they will, but they didn't get around
well, they
to doing
didn't
that.
do it because even this current president, he promised to hit the ground running. Well, he was able to hit the ground because you can see lots of meetings with the EFCC, with diplomats and what have you, but we are still yet to see one single appointment. That says a lot. You can see even when they had the meeting with the organized labor yesterday, the person that ended up briefing Nigerians, we don't even know his position in governance. And he was the one who a section of the media actually reported as having been appointed as the spokesman of the president, only for him himself to say that no, that wasn't the case. So if the president had maybe made some appointments, probably we would have, even the briefing, like I said yesterday, will have come from an official, a more relevant background than what we had. Because so many people were even saying, okay, in which capacity did you even attend the meeting? Because in the absence of ministers, we expect the permanent secretaries, the other officials like directors and what have you, to be able to represent government in issues like this. But all of a sudden we end up with people that are yet to have any appointment with government.
Okay, I know the state governors, some of them have hit the ground running, and I can see that some of them are dropping comments about the fuel subsidy removal. But one thing that, a lot of Nigerians are very confused about right now is the $800 million palliatives that was supposed to be disbursed to poor families to cushion the effect of the removal of fuel subsidies. And that hasn't happened yet, and then the subsidy has been removed. I understand that you said that some of these things have to be put in place before. Now, what does this pose for us, or ordinary Nigerians now? Do we think that this will be made to, given to poor families, or we expect the government to divert it into something else? And if they do, is that the right thing to do?
Well, actually, I faulted even the method, that the former government wanted to adopt, because you are talking about checking the, to see how much people are, spending to make calls, their bank balance and what have you. A sizable number of Nigerians are unbanked. The last time I think only about 30 or 40% of the population, even have a bank account. So if you rely on that methodology, you may end up, missing those that actually need these palliatives. So many people in our rural communities, in fact, there are no financial institutions in most of our rural communities, let alone, the members of such communities having some bank accounts. So like I said, if the government is sincere about this, honestly, they should be able to wait a bit, since we are talking about the end of June, and this is the first day of the month. So why don't we tarry a while to see how we can get to fix all these palliatives, so that by the time this thing will take full effect, even the people will not feel the impact. Because right now, I can only imagine, so many people will have to take their children out of school. So many people will have to forgo 1 or 2 meals. So many things will happen. And honestly, we shouldn't be burdening the common man with all this, because those that are in government, those that are well-to-do, even if they will feel the impact, it's certainly not at the level of what the common man will feel. So that's why I think the new administration should take all this into consideration, so that the people will see some respite.
Right, so let's quickly take a look at the City and Crime page on Daily Trust newspaper. That's pages 20 and 21. And we have a sad story here of thunder striking a 5-year-old boy to death in Katsina. We also have a man seeking a divorce over wife's plan to elope with clergyman. We have bandits kill man, hold wife, 4 kids in Kaduna. We also have a girl missing after leaving home for errand in Kwara State, and we also have LASMA threatens to impound vehicles impeding traffic at fuel stations. 222.42 kilogram of hemp intercepted in Ogun State. We also have police sergeants dismissed for collecting 98,000 naira from victim in Lagos, and this was actually an issue that was all over the news yesterday, considering the fact that this particular policeman actually took this man to a POS operator, and despite knowing that the man only had 100,000 naira in his account, ended up withdrawing 98,000 naira. So he's been derobed now, and he's going to be prosecuted.
Yeah, I hope this is only the beginning, so that in the end, you know, he will get to face the music, like Nigerians will say, because the police, you know, their responsibility is to actually protect the people, you know, so that people cannot take advantage of them, so that we don't end up as a lawless society where if you have more strength than the next person, you know, you take advantage of that, and that's why we have the police. But if the police, you know, a policeman, for that matter, will end up being the one, you know, that
breaks the law,
break the law, then I hope the authorities will make the perfect example, you know, using him as an example. Because, like I said, why should a policeman, you know, that should protect people, be the one harming them in this manner?
It's really sad, and of course you did mention about the fuel queues disrupting you know, smooth running of other vehicles. I find it very, very interesting, or probably confusing, when there's fuel scarcity and others who have little fuel in their car to take them to wherever they're going have to bear the brunt of people waiting to queue for fuel. It's really, really sad situation there. And I saw somebody told me I spent 1 hour just to escape 4 filling stations before getting to work.
You know, the funny thing is
4 meters walk, you know.
Where most of these filling stations are actually located are wrong, because most of them are located on the road, very close to the road. So, you know, there's no way you can actually escape, you won't escape the traffic there.
But somehow the queues have abated, because
they have disappeared.
Because how many people have the money, you know, to be able to afford it? If you look at the filling stations, you see some few vehicles inside, and what are they even buying? You see people buying 6 liters, 10 liters, people that used to fill up their tanks, you know, because so very few people can actually afford this.
There's actually so much to say on this fuel subsidy removal issue, but then thank you so much, Nasir Lowell, for, you know, joining us on Daybreak this morning, and all the analysis on the issues bothering Nigerians, you know, this morning. Thank you so much for for gracing us with your presence. That was Nasir Lowell, Editor-in-Chief of Dateline 360 newspapers. And with that, we'll take a break. When we return at the top of the hour, the show continues. Stick around.